Hey guys, how you doing? It's Mick Tully for the World Martial Arts Television Show yet again. Hope you had a great week, and you better be watching those recent ones that we've been throwing up there. Yeah, Chris Parker, absolute beauty. Feedback's been brilliant. Thank you for all the feedback. And also Chris Crossan was great as well. I hope Will doesn't mind. But the thing is, if you can help us out here, there's a bit of a thumbs up emoji that you'll see, especially on the YouTube. And if you can give us a thumbs up and then press subscribe, don't worry, we won't get you into any chain letter nonsense or anything like that. You don't have to sell your soul. I won't be trying to sell you aloe vera or anything, but it just means that we can deliver straight to you, and it helps that absolutely devilish algorithm we've got going on at the moment with YouTube, which I don't know. It's like they're trying to hold us back. I don't know. You can't hold back progress. You Luddites over there in YouTube. Right, anyway, all of that out of the way. Sorry about the preamble, but I've got an absolute beauty of an interview today for you. If I come across a little bit more stoic than usual and a little bit more well-behaved, it's quite funny because the gentleman I'm going to chat to today, he's a bit of a paradox. He's easily one of the funniest men I know, easily one of the nicest blokes I know, easily, when it comes to Karateka, one of the most functional men I know. But every time I hang around with him, I feel like I should behave myself a little bit, because he takes the really important parts of karate very seriously. And I don't really, and I should be a little bit more well behaved around him. But it is the one and the only Sensei Steve Lowe. Steve, thanks for coming in, man.
You're very welcome. What an introduction.
Hey, well, you know what I mean? Wigan's finest, mate. And I know quite a few guys around Wigan. We're going to start at the beginning, because it's always a good place to start a story, right? How did you get into martial arts?
So when I was about eight going on for being 9 years old, I've been brought up on quite a rough council estate. Fighting and bullying was a daily occurrence, not just for me, but for nearly everyone, who I was brought up with. And I had a Chinese friend who seemed to, he didn't go out of his way to fight, but when anything happened when he was there, he'd destroy everyone. It was only 8 or 9 years old kids, but he could defend himself against bigger kids and everything. And it kind of turned out that it's like a bit of a Mr. Miyagi one. His dad was a kung fu teacher, and basically I just started to beg and wanted him to teach me. I didn't know it was kung fu at the time. It was just I needed to protect myself. And it was one particular day we'd had a bit of a fight with a gang of kids, and I came worse off, and we ended up going back to his house to be fixed up. And that's when his dad said, right, fair enough, okay, I'll teach you. And I started then with him, and that was about 8 going on for 9 years old. And then I was there almost daily with him. And all it kind of consisted of really was strengthening, conditioning, and if they do this, you do that to them. And that was till I was 16, till they emigrated.
And was that kung fu?
Yeah,
with him being Chinese?
Yeah, so that ended up being, I didn't know it at the time, but that was Southern Praying Mantis kung fu.
Oh, really?
I didn't know that it was that. I actually only found it out its entirety. It was when his uncle died in California, and he was the next to take over, and that's why they emigrated from Wigan, basically, back over to, well, not back over to California, but over to California, so he could then take over the school. And that's when I found out fully who he was and what it was. It was a real proper. The only thing he didn't have me doing was cleaning cars, because nobody had cars then.
But the funny thing is, you've hit on something there, because obviously me and you we're very geeky when it comes to martial arts. We like the minutiae. We like the real detail of stuff. But like yourself, I just wanted to, like, all karate is the same, all kung fu is the same. It's like karate is all Japanese, kung fu. And then, I used to, the first time I actually started really thinking about that, a differentiation between different arts, was when I saw Korean karate, and it was Tang Sudo, right? So it was basically Taekwondo, and Like when you look back on it now, it was just a political thing where it was like, right, we're going to change to a different name. But up until that point, I didn't really care what it was called. It's like, you know, the whole ignorance is bliss thing. And were you doing forms and like,
no.
yeah,
no, nothing. It was honestly, it was really. They used to live on. There's a particular estate. It's gone now, thank God. And they were like flats that used to have a balcony.
Yeah,
and they used to have us basically training. You know, like you see in the Karateka movies when you're in the horse riding stance. You know, 2 tins of rice and this kind of thing, and then punching pads. What they were pads. We used to hit. Remember the old yellow pages?
Yes.
Do you remember? I used to have us hitting the yellow pages and stuff like that. Was our pads.
Wow.
Showing us basically what to do. But I was the same. I had no understanding as far as I was concerned. If it was to do with Bruce Lee, then it was good, you know. But yeah. I was the same. So I only understood style because when they left and I was 16, I did then what everybody did because there's no internet. So there was a poster up in the local shop at a martial art, a karate dojo it was, at a local labour club. And I went, and that was the first time that I'd seen another style, and it turned into a Shotokan.
Right. But you see, you know, this is the thing. So, you know, that's it's almost like, and this is new to me. This is like the opposite to most people, because most people jump into like something like, and I don't want to upset like, you know, some karateka, but like Shotokan is as generic as it can get in this country, especially where you are, and because it's like, you know, the KUGB were big anyway, right? And it was like, you know, you go down south, it's like, oh, KUG, no, that, because those boys up there, those Liverpool boys ran the show. Like I went up and trained once at the Red Triangle, and then I realised how tough these dudes really were. You know what I mean? But most people got into karate and then went into a more, esoteric art, which, Praying Mantis is an esoteric art. I don't care what anyone says, but it was one of them. So how did you find the transition from going, because obviously it was alive, right, when you were doing Praying Mantis to Shotokan?
Yeah, so I remember that, I'll never forget. So the first class I went to was on Sunday, right? And the Sunday class for them was kumite. So I goes in. First thing what was unusual, they were all putting shin and step pads on, back, you know, mitts on, and I'm thinking groin guards, and I've got none of them. I'm not used to that. So I think the first one I had, so I had this guy come running at me with, you know, trying to punch me and what have you, and I kicked him in the bollocks and put an elbow around his head. So then it was kind of like, oh, you can't do that, you know, you can't do this kind of. So I don't understand what you mean. Fighting's fighting to me. And then I had to really change how I was, you know. And I went, I've said this before, I went, you know, I was 16 years old, going through high school up to being 16. When I started high school, I went from being a kid who was bullied in middle school and junior school to a kid in high school that even though I was by no means a bully. I was one of the kids that you just didn't mess with anymore. If you mess with me, you know, I think I was the first person to, you know, you feck around, you find out kind of thing, you know. But then I went from that, started doing Shotokan for 2 or 3 years, and then I did a brief stint on the doors at 19, and I went there and I was like, what the hell? It had undone the abilities I had.
Yeah.
Because I had to change and adapt. I'd done the full circle. And it was then that I thought, oh no. I've got to do something about this, you know. And then went on from there.
Well, you see, this is that's a very young age to come to that realization, because, you know, I have a few theories in life. It used to be like, just show you how I've had to evolve my theories. So I used to say for years, especially when I was in the karate world, there's nothing like when people used to talk about black belts being really tough. I was like, no, what's the worst thing on the planet is either a complete and utter like dyspraxic white belt who doesn't understand any rules whatsoever and just throws limbs at you really fast. And because he doesn't know the rule of the game, it's a bit like, you know, it's like playing chess with a pigeon, isn't it? He'll knock all the pieces over and shit all over the board on you, right? So you can't fight against that guy. And then the other one is like the brown belt, because the hungry brown belt's a nightmare. And we have it now in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, where it's like there's no one more dangerous than a blue belt, and a fresh blue belt at that, because he's already scared because all the white belts are trying to kill him because it's Lord of the Flies. And the only way they get their blue belt is to be able to beat up a fresh blue belt. And then he's there going, right, well, I've got to take out as many scalps as possible. And it's that, I think the best way to explain it is that chaos, because it's like, just as you're saying this, my brain's already firing off here, where it's like, you went in, and with the greatest respect, you went into like Praying Mantis, where I'm guessing it was chaotic. The training is chaotic, right? And then you went from that to trying to, I'm not saying that you can bring order to chaos, but living in that chaotic world, you can get a bit of an idea. You know, because you've been there, right? And then what you do is you go in and then you allow yourself to be shackled by parameters because you want to learn a style. And like I've found this before. It's like I always say that some dogmatic styles is like wearing an ill-fitting suit, because the thing is, that's why you should go and see a tailor, because you can buy the suit and it might be good off the peg, but not very many times does it fit perfectly. And that's like every martial art I've ever seen, you know. And on the right person, yeah, that fits well. But like, again, I know I'm waxing lyrically here. It's very Bruce Lee what I'm saying here. You know, it's like Bruce Lee was the only guy that could get away wearing a pair of like track bottoms, three-piece, like a tweed jacket, and then a deer stalker. You know, I'm going off on tangents here, but like that's basically what he was doing. So I found it interesting there where you were saying that, because when you go in, one of the things that I've always admired about you, by the way, is you've been straight off from the bat, where you're like evangelical about this point here, which I'm going to get you to explain, right? Which is karate was never meant to be a sport, was it? As far as you're concerned, right? No. And it's like, I've looked at it and it is quite funny, because karate, if you watch it at the highest level, you know, the likes of Frank Brennan, Eugene Codrington, Black Jeff Thompson, how mad's that? Like they've got two Jeff Thompsons, you have to say which one. Oh, the black guy, he was, the point fighting guy, right? And then you go, but like you watch those guys and their poetry in motion, but they're only poetry in motion because I get to see the YouTube highlights. When you see Kyoka Shinkai is a great example, because Kyoka Shinkai, I truly believe, is one of the only martial arts styles that's been able to shoehorn itself into a sporting sort of environment, and not basically not all of you turn into eunuchs. If that, you understand where I'm coming from, right? Yeah. Where you're being restrained. Because when you see those guys, it's just two guys squaring off and just throwing limbs as hard as they can at each other. And then every now and again, a guy who understands a bit of Tai Sabaki. So if you guys don't know what I'm on about, karate, you're not non-karateka, just basically footwork. But Tai Sabaki does sound cool, you know what I mean? But it was like, you've never, ever believed that karate should have become a sport. No. So can you expand on where you first came out with that, where you first came to that conclusion, and basically how you teach now?
Right. So even though I'm known as a karate guy, I've just finished the class. I'm probably the more outside of this dojo. I mean, I've been saying it this morning. We've got 4 new guys started. And probably the most thing I say on seminars is stop doing karate. You know, I get a lot of karate guys come in and I say, look, first of all, let's stop doing karate. I'm not teaching you karate. You can't really put a name on what we do, right? It's pre-karate. It's uchinadi, it's todi, it's tea, it's whatever, what's in the name, It's just pre-Japanese karate, before Japanese influence, right? So when I kind of had to go down the road of trying to get my fighting ability back, I started going down, looking. I've been to Japan numerous times, going to Okinawa. And when you go to Okinawa and you see, I've been very lucky actually, because the guy we train with in Okinawa, Sensei, he's Wechiru by style, but more kind of in its origin of Pangai Nu, where the origin is pure self-protection. And then you come across people like Vince Morris, who I spent a time with Vince Morris, and Don Kane, his representative here, and then Hanshi McCarthy as well. And you look at what work they've done, and I thought, hang on a minute, there is karate in its origin, it's got it. You know, it's got everything that I need. I've just got to get off my lazy ass and find out exactly what it is. So that kind of set me down a path of studying the pre-karate, if you will. You know, what is the origin? When the origin was only about self-protection. You know, everybody seems to have jumped on this bandwagon now of, you know, the kata and application. It's the application that used to be that's the only the fighting side of karate. You know, the self-protection side, not the fighting side. And it's wrong. You know, it's kind of like, I get all the slippers thrown at me for this, but, you know, they've got to understand that the fighting came first. You know, the kata came from that, you know, as a solo representation of that, as a way to pass over principles and ideas. And it's generally everything that you need to protect yourself is in karate.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, you see, you've hit on something here, which is I'm going to have to, I'm going to have to mention, again, a karateka that I really rate. It's really funny because I got out of karate and, like, I was always, deep down, I was always going to be a JKD guy. But, like, karate was great because it was a great foundation for me. And then, obviously, as you well know, it's like, I came up, you graciously invited me up to teach with, when you were doing the seminar to raise money for mental health and stuff. And I came up and I loved what you were doing because I was watching you and you go, first of all, we don't do karate. This isn't karate. This is a name we've just had to put on it, right? And then it was really funny because yourself, and you'll be embarrassed that I'm throwing you in I'm putting you in the same sentence as this guy, and you'll say no, that you shouldn't be in there, but I truly believe you should. Gavin Mulholland, right? Another, like, just a legend in karate, just unreal. And he'll tell me, no, don't really do karate. You go, it looks like you do. Wear a gi, speak Japanese terminology. And he's like, yeah, but that's how I learned it. So I'm going to have to pass that on. But it's way bigger than that. It's so much bigger than that. And it is funny because the bunkai always got me when I was doing karate with Andy Margaret, because we were like, and Andy, wicked bloke, and love him to death. Still see him all the time. Great guy. And I always said to her, I said, it feels contrived what we're doing here because we're trying to go like start a Pinan Nidan, guys can't see it, but or Shodan if you want, a Ru guy, and they're like, we're trying to work it. And then as soon as I did Jeet Kune Do, I was like, so that's just a gunting and a backhand, right? But I still maintain it's a Sotowuki, cover, Tetsui, and it was like, well, yeah, we had to get this. But the thing that got me about karate with yourself and with Gavin, it was like Gavin took it to the cage, made it work. And then it was like grappling, goes, no, the grappling's in the karate. And I was like, really? And he went, no, look. And then he showed me it. And then, this is the thing that's made me, I've had to rethink a lot of this recently, especially with my own jiu-jitsu, because I went for a period there where I was I was martial artist, to trying to then be an athlete, and being an athlete in your mid-50s against guys who are in their 20s, who, like, I wind up all the boys all the time. I say, look, when you guys get girlfriends, I might get a chance to be able to beat you up again. But at the moment, I'm just dealing with a bunch of mad incels who are just interested in choking each other out. So how can I live in that world? And like, brings me round to what you mentioned earlier about karate not being a sport, because I was, it's mad how just as I'm going to use myself an example, like you get into an art and you think, right, now I'm settled. And then you have to reassess who you are literally every 7 to 10 years, I think now. Like if you stick with it every 7 to 10 years. And I only said it this morning at my class that I was teaching. I turned around and I said to the guys, I was like, guys, like what worked for me 8 years ago doesn't work for me anymore. Or it does, but it takes more effort to do it. And what I want to do is I want to stick with it as long as possible. So that's going to, like, it's leading me into where we're going to backtrack a little bit, because you got into Shotokan, but then explain your evolution from where you were in Shotokan to, like, explain, if you don't mind, the name of your dojo. Because what I like about the name of your dojo, it's funny because for some people look at it and go, so what he did was he got this railway arch, put down probably the best wooden floor I've ever seen in my life, which is perfect, and then just opened up a door on it. But it's way bigger than that, because the thing is, your dojo, and I know you pride yourself on it, because it's something special in today's society. It ain't just a space. Yeah, there's a bit more to it. So if you don't mind, explain how you got to where you were. And I know this is a big convoluted way of asking this, right? Explain how you got to the position where you first opened up the door, because when you opened that up, you had a completely different ethos to being a Shotokan guy. You know where I'm coming from. So time for the timeline, Steve.
Right. So I'll skip some. So I went through a period of, like I say, I did a short stint of door work. Then I've done little bits of stuff from that, a bit of minding, a bit of this, a bit of debt collecting. I've not been an angel, right? Let's just say that. Yeah. But it gave me experience, right? So I kind of sourced people out, so all over the world, and all I wanted to do was try and get what I wanted from the martial arts, which was kind of what I was brought up with, but also doing the karate road. I'd already decided then the karate road was for me, because I knew the answers were there. And by my mid-20s, I realised there wasn't one person who had the answer for me. So I thought, right, okay, I'll tell you what I'll do. So I'll start teaching. I'll get a few of my friends together. We'll get a dojo. It was in a school hall, and we'll just train together. That was the very, very start. I didn't want to do it for monetary, nothing like that. All I wanted to do was get a few like-minded guys together. Let's build something we can work to train, basically. And then, so that's kind of come through, and I've been through every version of that you could dream of, I even tried to keep it. I went down the mainstream route. My dojo in Wigan was the first dojo for the JKS in this country. Went down that road for a while. Tried to get the kind of, what's the word? Try to get a bit more mainstream, because I had bills to pay. I wanted to make a student group, and then I just kind of realised that I'm never going to have it. What we do is never going to be mainstream. Ever, because there's only a certain amount of people, for example, will gladly be it. There's only a certain people who will gladly go through the mill to try and get power generation. It takes a certain kind of person. So I've always had, so from then, probably from 90, I think it was 99, I got my first full-time dojo. And since then I've had full-time dojos. Ones I've owned, ones with part-owned. And then the last one before this, we was part-owned with somebody else, and that didn't work out because we had different directions. And then, but I had a good set of lads behind me. And I said to Luke, I've had enough. Let's look for a dojo which is just ours. We'll keep it private. We're not interested in what other people think and stuff like this. So, and we found this. And it's actually, this coming December, we'll have had it 10 years then. And we've just kind of, we kind of morphed then into a private dojo of sorts. But anybody can come, but you've got to have an invite. And we've become kind of this, like a co-op really, like a self-funding, self-managing full-time dojo. Studying what, the name of that dojo is the Koru. The name of the dojo just simply means, so Koru means ancient ways, and in my interpretation of the ancient ways, is not like the Japanese one where it's about legacy. Koru for me, ancient ways, is when it was of its original purpose, which is self-protection, and Kodokan just means the building that we train. So in essence, it just means this is the building that we train in the ancient ways, and that's it. It's as simple as that.
But you see, this is the thing, right? So, bear in mind when I say this, any of my friends who are watching this, especially the guys who have got really successful kids programs, I'm in no way judging you whatsoever, right? Because all of my friends who have got successful kids programs, whether it's Brazilian Jiu or if it's just generic martial arts, they run it first and foremost as a martial arts school. So, I've got a couple of friends of mine who, it's funny because we're all sort of reaching the same age now where they're all like, I'm just done in with kids now. Can't handle it. I'm having kids turning up saying, yeah, the warm-up's too hard. And, you give a kid 15 press-ups and then they're going off into a corner crying because you've triggered them somehow. And you're like, mate, when I was your age, I'd give you 15 press-ups and I'd have one of your mates sitting on your back. Like, that's how we used to train. You know what I mean? It's like, and I'm not going to lower it. So you've got some guys that are teaching martial arts, and when they do it as a business, there's very few and far between guys that are able to keep that level of authenticity without having to, sacrifice a little bit. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying, like, we all know the guys who have got, like, well, we do kids' birthday parties here. And you're like, mate, you'll be serving McDonald's in there next, mate. You know what I mean? You're not really a martial arts gym now. What you are is you are a pretty good childcare facility. Don't really want that. And I said, I'm not judging anybody to do that because everyone's got to make a buck, right? But like with you, it's so funny because, like myself, I don't want to do it for money. Because if I do it for money, I might have to start questioning why I'm doing it. Might have to let my standards slip a little bit. Don't get me wrong. I've got guys that train with me who physically, what level are they really at? And I'm like, no, but you didn't see where we started. That's what, again, this is something I'm very passionate about. It's like, this guy didn't know his left from his right when he came in. This guy, when he walked in, couldn't even hold a conversation with me. And now he's more outgoing. So guess what? He's a black belt. And then a real fight, which is like something I want to touch on with you. It's like, when we first started, Steve, we were just fighting bullies and avoiding taking a kicking by untrained people. What a lot of, especially our generation, don't understand in martial arts now is, and that, like, here's the thing, like, as a martial artist, some of these young scroats worry me now. You know what I mean? Because they've had 30 years of watching UFC. So whether or not they train or not, they'll roll around the floor with their mates. They know what an armbar is. They know what a triangle is. They know what a single and double leg takedown is. And young men are dangerous. That's why we used to have national service. Get them out of society, get them hanging around with tough guys for 2 years, give them some structure, bring them back in. And it's going to lead me into what I'm saying about karate now. With you, it's like, as far as I'm aware, most of the guys that come and train with you are black belts or nearly there. Every time I've gone to your spot, it's funny because you look like the further education. So you look like, at the very least, a BA in martial arts. So some of the guys that I see that go up with you, no, but you understand where I mean? Like, so you don't have to do the whole, it's like, Hideri Hamiga, mate. No. The other left, mate. Not that left foot there. No, that's your right foot. So you don't have to do the basic motor function stuff, right? And I like it because of the way that you've carved out. It's a niche, yeah. And it's funny because if you look on, depending on how well behaved your algorithm is, right? You can look on your social media and go, oh, karate's dying. It's all about BJJ. But if you're a karateka, you look at it and go, what's this? Like, every now and again, I get these things where guys are rolling around the floor. So the algorithm is shaping the way we think, first of all, more importantly. But what people don't understand is how big traditional martial arts still are, especially in this country. There's way more people doing karate and taekwondo than doing MMA. Way more. And it's like, it's funny because the reason I've led all of that is you normally just get karateka come in and it's invite only. Have you ever had like the odd just Walter Mitty character try and drop in? And tell me about these guys. Because I love them in the JKD world. So they turn up in the Game of Death suit and they're like, my favourite's when they try and impress Danny Osanto at a seminar. And you go, you're talking about a guy who knew Bruce Lee. And like, as good as that like, unitard is that you're wearing, mate, you know what I mean? It's not really that impressive. So you've had a couple of the Walps walk in, yeah?
Well, no, not walk in. We kind of... So I was only on about this again the other day, because like I said, we've just got 4 new guys come. We've, not by choice, we've ended up kind of a dojo that's full of downgrades. They've all, they're all middle-aged men. We have had some ladies come through. but it's nearly all middle-aged men, been training 20 years plus, become somewhat, regardless of style, become disillusioned with what they've been doing. They need that deeper study. They want that next level. You know, they've reached an age where they can't prance about anymore with the young kids, but they know there's more to it. And they kind of source us out that way. But we have got, because of the seminars that I hold in, I've put us on Google. So you get people who Google karate in Wigan, and of course we're going to come up, you know. And we've had 2 or 3 that, like, you know, for the front door to go here while we're training is very rare, because nobody knows. You've been here, you don't know who it is. It's very hard to find. It's not advertised anywhere. So to find us, they've got to put some work in, and that, unfortunately, because I've had to put us on Google so people can actually find us, we have had the odd strange one come in. And the last one we had, he, previous to coming to us, he'd been with a few friends doing MMA in the local park, right? And yeah, I know. And he came in kind of expecting to do that. And then what I do is, generally when I get people like that come in and you think, oh Christ, here we go. So what I'll do then is I'll do a power generation seminar. So I'll make them all the pad, and it won't be me, you know, sometimes it's me, but I'll get one of the other guys and we'll just go through a basic power generation. And until you shot pad and into your body and come out your ass, then, you know, you've not felt anything like it. So I generally do that, and then if they stay after that, fair play, you know, they're going to come back, but they don't, you know. And this one guy who came, he'd been sparring in the park with his MMA friends, said basically, I can't do that. I said, why not? He said, because I don't think I'll live long if I'm a trainer, you're doing that. And he was like, what?
Wow.
You know, so he didn't stay. Well, we've had a few like that, you know, we've had all kinds, but we've been, in 10 years of being here, I would say probably we've only had about 4 people turn up. And it's funny because the kind of, we're, you know, without being sexist, right, we're kind of becoming the spearmint rhino of the karate world.
Yeah.
You know, like a gentleman's club, you know what I mean? It's kind of like, you know, there's when the ladies come in and they get treated fairly and they get treated well. I wish more women would come, but they don't tend to stay. You know, we had a young girl come, V, half Chinese, half Irish girl who trained at previous dojo, and she came and she stayed for quite a while. And it was only a job and a new relationship that kind of stopped her training here. And I said to her, all fair play to you, you know, I said, you're a 20-odd-year-old girl who's coming and getting stuck in with a group of middle-aged men. I said, fair play to you. She said, well, that's what I'm here for, because realistically, it's middle-aged men I'm going to have to protect myself from. I said, oh, fair enough, yeah, you know, so that's
a point.
You know, she stayed for a couple of years. But like I said, you know, her life changed and it moved on. But I mean, the other ones are prior to, we've only had it once here, but prior to being here, when I started getting known for my power generation stuff, I've had people come, I've heard about me or seen stuff or somebody's told them, and I've had people come, and on seminars as well, and kind of like, what's this Shockwave stuff, you know, show me. You know, like a modern day test.
Yeah.
You know, like, I want to fight the hardest man in the dojo kind of thing. Yeah. And, you know, it's good because they've never felt anything like it ever. And when I only tap them, and then when it goes all through the body and it shakes everything, and then they go, all right. You know?
Well, that's, you see, this is the thing, right? So me and you, we had a bit of a mess around because I was trying to, I wanted to use, and I've got to give a shout out to him, Ian Abernathy. So Ian was teaching a seminar, he was doing bunkai, and then he was doing, basically, he was teaching Hubert. I still maintain it. So he was teaching Hubert, and it made it look like karate. And I used to make a joke, certainly not at Ian's expense. But I used to say, when I used to see the guys doing it, I said, it's like Hubert with Viagra. And they went, what do you mean? I said, hey, a little bit stiffer than I'd like, you know what I mean? you could have given me a bit more warning, mate. You know what I mean? So we were doing it, me and you were messing around. And I was using it as bait, you know, it's that whole thing where people go, it'll never work in a real fight. And it's really funny because when me and Al came up to see you, Al says, what are you going to teach? And I said, we're going to do some arm drags and stuff from Huber. And he went, what? And I said, mate, come on, look at it. That's a Joe Nookie block. And he was like, wow. And I went, yeah, mate. I said, that's a Tetsui. I said, they'll get it. It's easy. And me and you started messing around. And then it again, and I'm not buttering you up here, right? But the thing is, we're from the same cloth. And like, I used to think for years, you know, when you see that false humility, I used to say it to Jeff Thompson a lot, you know, you go to his seminars and there's certain guys that are just really good. A great example, Chris Crossan, when I first met Chris, well, I'm not really that good. I said, you're doing yourself a disservice, mate. You're a proper brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. You're a really, really good grappler. Like the fact that you're saying I'm not really good, I said, that could actually scare a few people because they go, well, if he's not good, is there any point in me ever starting? You know what I mean? So I'm completely the opposite now. So what I'll do is, if you're really that good, as I maintain all the time, they go, wow, you're good. And I went, now think about it this way. What would you rather be? Would you rather be disappointed by me? Right? Like being underwhelmed. I'd rather you surprised. And I said it to Al, because I was using that Huber just so that me and you could have a mess about, so we could get our hands on each other. And I went to Al, I told him, met my match there, mate. And he went, what? I said, I said, Steve can generate the power that I can generate. And he went, even that crazy Bruce Lee 1-inch punch thing that you do on people. And I'm like, yeah, because the thing is, I want to call it chi, I want to call it ki, atemi something. And basically, I'm like, I think it was just some Chinese dude trying to gild the lily a little bit. What it is force, max, acceleration, and descent. That's literally what it is. Like, again, it was that whole thing. It was like, a lot of those, especially the older karateka, I think they didn't really understand physics. Because when we look at it now, we just go, it's physics. It's like, you know, I want you to explain on the Shockwave thing, because I do like that, because when you see somebody on the receiving end of it, it is funny because they go, what the actual has just happened to me here? So tell me, how did you discover that first? And I'm gonna preempt you a little bit, because I'm guessing punching yellow pages at the start, and I know you're very well known for the Makiwara training, because the Makiwara training is basically, you know yourself, you can't generate the power, you're going to injure your hands pretty quickly. And the great thing about the Makiwara is people don't understand. They think that they learn from the success. And I know from my own Makiwara training, you don't. You learn from all of the failures. You're just running out of ways of failing. So explain, first of all, the genesis of the Shockwave, even though I've maybe spoiler alert for all you guys watching, might have done that. But then explain how you've brought it on from there. Right.
Well, do you remember the program, The Way of the Warrior? In the 80s?
Yeah, of course.
Do you remember the episode with Higuana Sensei?
Yes.
He was in his flat above the garage, above the dojo.
Yeah.
And they were talking, and he was on about the Okinawan language, and saying that there is certain terms within the language that relates to karate that if they die, you'll lose terms that only relate to old karate, right? So I think I was about 17 when that was it. And I thought, hang on a minute, there's a secret karate language that if you learn it, you can learn about old karate technique, right? So I went on that journey then. In the 80s, impossible, right? In the 90s, a bit easier. You used to get a few boots. Once the internet came along, then went to Okinawa, learned even more, right? The reason I'm saying that is I came across these terms. So one particular term is atifa. Now, atifa means, in Uchinaguche, shockwave, right?
Right.
How to create a shockwave punch. But off the back of that, you've got other terms. So you've got like gamaku, which just basically means creating a core. Chinkuche, the release of that core. And then you've got putting it on like what we call in modern terms, like time on target, like sticking.
Yeah.
This, got a term for that called muchimi. And then, so all these things coming together. And it's basically described, but of course, in modern times, we've got modern names for these, haven't we? But even back then, they understood that a small guy can't beat a big guy through strength, right? You can't. But it's like this dojo's mantra, right? I say this all the time. This is what I'm going to have on my gravestone, amongst other things, right? My gravestone is going to be as big as Beach Hill, right? So it's going to say on it, so our mantra is, you can never stop a man's size, strength, or ability being an advantage for him, but through correct training, you can stop it being a disadvantage for you, right? So one of those things is these little Okinawan guys, Chinese guys, whatever, they understood how the body worked, right? And they could manipulate the internals and externals of the body to create an energy force that you hit with, right? The correct kinetic chain, which is part of Chinkucha, delivering that shockwave time on target, putting it into the body, not on the surface, which is called nunchun. The end result is ati this shockwave, and there's many other facets to it, but basically that's what kind of got me into it and while learning it. Then when you feel it yourself from somebody else, a little guy taps you on the chest, and then you feel like you're going to shit a kidney out. You're like, what? It doesn't compute, does it? You're kind of like, I don't understand this. But me being me, and you're the same as me, I'm like, I want it. I don't care what it costs, how much time I've got to put in, I want that. I've never been a big guy. I'm broad set, but I've always been short. So that kind of started me. But here's the other one, right? Through all my studies, what I learned was when karate left Okinawa and went to Japan, it had already been changed in Okinawa, by the way, to go into the school systems. But two major things they took out of kata. One was, which is very well documented, all the nasty stuff, all the gouging, biting, throwing, limb breaking. But the other one that was taken out was the power generation principles, right? So when I realised this, so then part of my study was, let's put this power generation back in, and it changes the kata entirely, completely. And what you got to remember is, from our perspective, what kata is. It's principle based. If you're doing it on your own, it should be 80% principle driven. However, that principle is how to move, how to breathe, how to punch, how to kick, how to generate power. When you apply that with a partner, it flips on its head. It becomes 80% application based, 20% power. But you've got to have that power there. So it kind of, putting all this together, then you start looking at kata in it with different eyes, and I start seeing it. I start seeing how they transfer the mass. I start seeing how they float in and transfer. I had to stop doing kata like a modern person, if that makes sense. Deep stances and as a performance. Once I flipped that coin and I learned that everything's in it, certainly the power generation, when you start looking at it through power generation principles, it changes the whole dynamic of the kata. Because then you realise, why am I stepping? Why am I moving? Why am I lifting this leg? Why am I bringing the pelvis up? Why am I tilting this? All these things. So now all of a sudden once that penny dropped, then you think, Christ, it's in every single kata. Everything, all this power source generation is every kata that's ever been. Apart from modern versions. You've got to have the right version, by the way. And that was the kind of the journey that's what, ironically, I'm like a one-trick pony now. I'm known for my power. I'm like a power bitch.
I'm going to have to step in there because you're not. You see, this is the funny thing. It's like with you, and I mean, like, so cards on the table. I'm going to tell you right now. One of the things that I've really, really enjoyed watching is the evolution of the three amigos with yourself, Simon, and the wonderful Johnny Johnson, right? So it's funny because each one of you bring a different facet to it. It's like, John, you got to remember, all three of you together create something just like, as I said, when I've seen you in action, I love it, because where you're saying I only just bring power, I don't know so much, because I don't want to sound facetious when I say this, but as the youngest one out of the three of you, you're the oldest head when I look at it. Yeah, because Simon is like, and I really mean this, is what the JKA, KUGB, put a bit of a villain's moustache on him, a good cigar and a fine whiskey every now and again. He should be a Bond villain, shouldn't he? Simon Oliver should be a Bond villain. But like, he's taken what the KUGB and the JKA were and evolved it. And then John has gone, and it's like adaptive martial arts. And what I like about John is it's so funny because it's gone off in two separate directions. So he's got karate that actually really, really works. And then here's the paradox of it all. The other part of the adaptive is adapting it for people who can't move very well. You know, his work with the disabled community, I find really, really, really just, it's so impressive. It's unreal. And then it's funny because you shouldn't be the custodian of the old ways and everything like that, but you seem to be the one out of all of them that's like, right, you know. And I'm certainly not saying that you try and hold back progress in anything, but where you're like this going, no, but we shouldn't overlook the stuff that's gone before us, because there's a load of stuff in there we just haven't dug deep enough. Because you know yourself, everyone wants to understand something broadly. No one ever wants to dig down. Yeah, that's the thing. And now that's going to lead me on to we mentioned those two gentlemen who I know have been inspirations, and dare I say it, they're more contemporaries of yours. I know you wouldn't say that, yeah, because you'll look at it and go, no, they're my seniors, but I see you as all three of you as contemporaries, right? But instructors that have this is a lead question, by the way, because I already know the answer, but for the guys who don't know your history, right, give me your top three most influential instructors that you've had.
Obviously, Steve Lowe, the first one. He changed my life completely. Out of the applied stuff, I'd probably say I'll choose a study one, which is Patrick McCarthy. Patrick McCarthy's study into the old ways of the martial arts has been groundbreaking. Without him, I've read all these books. Without him, I wouldn't have gone on the journey I did. And then my third one, which is probably more obvious to everybody, is Sensei Ronnie Colwell.
Yeah, well,
who was instrumental in carving my mindset more than anybody else. My skill set was already there. He didn't really change my skill set, but my mindset, yeah, he carved that. Well,
we're talking about the same Patrick McCarthy. He wasn't just a karateka, was he?
No. Yeah, Patrick McCarthy's been there and done it everywhere. You know?
Well, you said that it's really funny because he's like out of apart from say Stephen K. Hayes, right? Apart from Stephen K. Hayes, the only other name that ever came up with, and again, it's like we're from that generation where we're just coming out of the ninjutsu, really. BS, yeah. Come on, mate. And then you actually meet a real life guy who studied ninjutsu, and then you go, shit, this guy really has it, right? So he's somebody that I've read all of his books as well. And again, dare I say it, I always looked like a Don Draper type character. That's how I've always looked at him. But it's really funny because it was only with the advent of the internet, right? And I always felt like, and I want, hopefully you can expand on this for me, right? So whether or not he was the best kept secret, or I think he did it by choice, like Ronnie Colwell was one of those. The only way I can explain it is once his name got thrown out, it was like finding out that Santa didn't exist, but a good way, because, it was that whole thing where it's like, so where's this guy been hiding? Like all of the guys that I really rate are now mentioning this guy. And then because as far as I'm aware, there wasn't very many magazine articles about him back in the old days of like when, and bear in mind who he hung around with and knew personally. If we just say we can throw Terry O'Neill straight into the mix, because Terry O'Neill had his own magazine. And I was like, if there was anyone that was going to put him in, so I'm like, if he's not in these magazines, is that out of choice? And believe it or not, he's one of the only people that I really wish I had met. So can you explain how you met him, and then how long you were actually with him, and why he was such a huge inspiration on you.
Right. So, like yourself, I had heard of Ronnie Colwell. He was a legend in karate, certainly in Northwest as well, but I mean worldwide. But you also kind of knew his name was synonymous with being a very, what can I say, being giving too much away. He was known as being a guy to handle violence, right? Let's just say that. And he, through social media, he decided that he was going to start these seminars called The Old Ways. So as soon as I see a seminar called The Old Ways, I want on, right? So I messaged him and I said, do you mind if I come along to the seminar on this Old Ways? Because it's like an invite only thing. I had to ask, you know. So I never heard anything for about 2 weeks. And then he messaged me back and said, yes, come along, Steve, and please bring some of your guys with you. Never thought nothing of it. But then after I'm thinking, how does he know I've got students? I didn't say, can be my guys come? Can I come? So anyway, went to The Old Ways. And it was basically, he reached the end of his life. He was already terminally, right? He'd already been given the countdown kind of thing. And he realised he wanted to give more, and he was looking for a particular student to pass that to. Right? He's had loads of students. They've all got his stuff and everything, and he was just looking for that bit more, something to give a bit more deeper stuff to. Right. So I did the seminar, and he was all over me. He kept putting his arm around me, calling me son, and I thought, I don't know him, but he was really, really over friendly, right? But in a good way. I don't mean like in a touchy-feely way, you know. Not like he wasn't like Savile, right? You know what I mean? So, so anyway, and then about a week later, I got a phone call. Another guy who I met, who became one of my jiu-jitsu instructors, Sensei Ray Bates, who was doing jiu-jitsu with Sensei Colwell. I started training with him, and I became his Uchidesha. And he rang me and he said, Sensei Ronnie, what's your number? And I'm like, why? He said, I don't know. Is it okay if I give him my number? I said, yeah. Anyway, so I'm on site, and about 10 minutes later, the phone goes, and it's him. And I'm like, oh, shit. Because I know his reputation, right? Mm. So he said, could you come to my house and look at some jobs? Oh, you just want some work doing, you know. Yeah. So anyway, it goes there, had a cup of tea, never did the job, right? He just wasn't, that was just a ruse to get me there. I had a few chats with him and stuff like that, and then we used to take his dog out. And we took the dog out, and he sat me down and he said, so what's the purpose of this study, son? What was it for? So I told him, and he said, do you think what you're doing fits that purpose? I said, I'd like to hope so. I'm trying my best. He said, well, I think I can help you with that. He said, so let's start training. And then, so I had him for 6 years before he passed. And he couldn't do much physically because of his health condition. But what he did, rather than beast me in the dojo, like he'd ring me at, you know, luckily, I had my own company then. And he'd ring me at like 9 a.m. Where are you? Whatever. And it's, I need you at the house now. So, right, okay. So I'd go and I said, right, well, what's up? Nothing. I just wanted to go through something. Well, that was his way of testing me, that I would drop everything and go. Like he would, you know, if he could have tested me in the dojo. And we did, you know, first of all, we started off in critique, what I'd already knew. And the main thing he wasn't happy with was my entering skills, you know. And he had a unique way of telling, you know, training that. I'll tell you what, I'll share this one. Have we got plenty of time? Yeah.
Yeah, loads of time.
Right, I'll share this quick story, right? So we're in his kitchen, and he's up like a little step, and I'm below him. And he's got a wooden tanto, you know what I mean? Right?
Yeah.
And he said, right, when it comes up, you've got to enter. You're in it, right? You've got to enter. So he goes like this, and I enter. And he went, what are you doing? I said, I've just done what you said. I've entered. He said, why are you taking your time? I was like, he said, do it again. So does it again. Goes like this with the button. Does it again. He said, why are you so slow? I'm like, I'm not. You know, I didn't think I was slow, right? He said, because you're using your legs. Why are you using your legs? Move from your centre. So, right, so I did it. And he said, and this is, I'm not going to swear, but this was what Ronnie was like, right? Within 5 minutes, he'd go, right, I'll make you move, throw the tanto down, picks a live tanto, right, out of his drawer, said, right, move. And he went to stab me in the head. And I did it, right? Got underneath him. He said, see, you can do it. So why have you not been doing it? Crack. You know, that's how he was. So it's kind of, because it was all, so Sensei Ronnie's history probably speaks for him better. So ex-SAS Pathfinder, bodyguard, doorman, security guy, he's done all kinds. Every level of dealing with violence you could ever think of, he's been there and done it. When you mentioned before about him not being in the limelight, it was by choice. Most of the people that were hierarchy, he'd been there, done it, and I'm like, nah, can't be arsed with that. I just do my own thing. He was very well known within the circles for who he was and his ability, but he stayed away from the limelight, like I did, because he just couldn't be arsed with the politics, the backbiting, tipping each other's chins. He had no part of it. But yeah, like you say, you speak to people who knew, you know, there's been like forefathers of jiu-jitsu in this country, you know, and karate really. But because it's not written down in history, you get certain people who bring it up and they say, well, he's not down as this and not that. So listen, that's because by choice, he didn't tickle the right people's chins to go down in that. But believe me, he was there.
Well, if you don't mind me, I got to inject here because I should have actually. It was remiss of me to say this. I'd actually heard of him, but it was never in print. That was the thing. It was like they were like he was used in the same. He was used in the same sentences as, you know, Gary Spears. So like people were saying to me, "Have you ever heard of this guy, Ronnie Colwell?" And I'm like that, and obviously. Like in my youth, I was a bit of an idiot. Anyway, I was still, well, it's that old classic line, you know, if you ever meet a bloke and you ask him, was he an idiot when he was younger? And he says, no, pretty good chance he's still a fucking idiot, right? Sorry for swearing, but you know what I mean? It's one of those where it's like, good job, you're probably still an idiot, mate. You haven't realised. And I remember, I can't remember how it worked. I was on a building site, actually, round Liverpool, and I was doing some work up there. And this would have been late 80s, late 80s, early 90s. And that was my one and only time when I went to the Red Triangle. And I went up there. And like the mad thing about that whole, like, again, when you talk about stuff being very zeitgeisty, right place, right time. So it's like in England, like you want to look at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, it's easy. You look down south and it will be Roger Gracie, Wilson Jr., for jiu-jitsu. Then it was Birmingham, and Birmingham was Braulio Estima and Maurizio Gomez to start off with. And then karate was funny because what a lot of people don't understand is, right, so you got Tiki Donovan, you got all the boys down south, right? But then you had an absolute dynasty up in Liverpool with the KUGB. And it's like when that people say lightning doesn't strike in the same place twice, it's like, well, you know, sorry, but there was quite a few guys like up around there training at the time, you know, especially where, you know, I don't know if you saw the book where it's Dennis Martin. So there's Dennis, there's Terry O'Neill and Gary Spears on the front of it. So those three on their own, you're talking about something else. But then what a lot of people don't understand is, and only because I'm a bit of a geek, is like Liverpool was huge for jiu-jitsu. But like pretty much like Bob Clark would be there, the main guy up there at the time. And it's funny that they all gravitated to the same place. But you see, it was funny because Ronnie Colwell, I heard the name, and it was through you actually, following you on social media, because it was mad because it was 1 minute, there was no sign of Ronnie Colwell. The next thing you know, there's you, there's Alfie Lewis, there's all these dudes coming up and they're like, I'm training with Ronnie Colwell. And you look at him and like, you know, impressive looking guy, even when he was like, because he was ill, but he was still a powerhouse looking dude. And like, he was a pretty distinctive character with the facial hair and everything else going on as well. And as soon as you looked at him, you were like, this guy, like, and it was like you were saying about this, the tickling the right chins. It was funny because the few clips that he started putting out, you just looked at it and you go, now that's the real deal. And then like that, and that piqued my interest because I'm like, but you don't get to that age and still be that good if you haven't been doing it for a really, really long time. And then what I really liked about his ethos was if there was a guy who could actually sell karate as an ass-kicking like endeavor, he could have done it. And then every single one of his posts were completely anathema to that. Like I am waxing lyrically here, but it's this whole thing where it's like, somebody who's truly, truly good at something, he doesn't have to tell you. Because if you can't see it, then there's something up with you, So that's going to lead me into this. So with studying with Ronnie, did you rethink everything that you had, or were you just like fine-tuning what you already understood?
Yeah, fine-tuning. Like I said, he spent about a year critiquing what I was doing. And then he said to me at the end of it, I can't teach you anything physically. Because I was trying to share with him the power generation stuff, the Okinawan stuff. And he's saying, I don't know, son, I don't know. And I said, well, I've done this. And he said, I don't know. That's beyond me. Let me show you this. And he kind of, I once said to him, he said to me, have you any regrets in your martial arts world? And I said, do you know what? I said, I haven't, but I wish I would have met you sooner, Sensei, when I'm maybe in my 20s. And he went, no. He said, I would have ruined you. I said, what do you mean? He said, all you be now is just a violent man. You wouldn't have the depth of knowledge. You wouldn't have the mindset to go away and study deeply what you do. He said, I would have ruined you. And I thought, what a strange thing to say, So, yeah, he kind of, I think more than anything, it was the mindset. See, what many people don't understand is, I can show you here, right? Can you read that? It's going to be in reverse, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right. So anyway, so on here it says, at the bottom it says Hikari, right? So that's an ode to Sensei Colwell. So at his time in Japan, his nickname was Hikari. Now, Hikari means light switch, right? So because he was able to switch it on and switch it off like a light switch, the violent side. And it was that kind of, I think most of us are capable of being violent if we need to be, yeah?
Yeah.
He could switch it on like that for nothing, and he tested me that way. He kind of made me able to tap into it, being ferocious, but then immediately come out. And it was that he enabled me to, he tested me in all kinds of ways. I'll tell you another quick story, right? This is Ronnie Colwell in a nutshell. So when he was dying, very particular about his food. He could only taste certain things, blah, blah, right? One day he says to me, I want chips and egg, right? So I was like, right, okay. I know where to go. We went to this Turkish place in the village where he lived. And I said, are you sure they do chips and egg? He said, they do chips and egg. I want chips and egg and a glass of milk, right? So he sits outside. Now this is how he works. I had about 4 or 5 of my guys with me, right? So he goes down, they come out, Sensei says, I want chips and egg. The guy says, well, we don't do chips and egg. He said, what do you mean? He said, we don't do chips and egg. He said, have you got potatoes? He said, yeah. Have you got eggs? Yeah. So what you do in chips and egg? We don't do chips and egg. You went, wow! So he snaps, storms off into the gaff. Of course, I've got to follow him. Goes in there, and when you go in these Turkish or this kind of restaurant, and all the young lads in there, the men, but when they're not in the restaurant, they train. You know what I mean? Don't you? You go in, they're all really buff, right? Goes in there, it's like Mr. Universe, right? So he goes in and he's going, chips and the manager comes out, who's bigger than them all. We got a problem. Sensei goes, deal with it, and walked out. That's him to a T. That's exactly how he used to test. But don't forget, I've got my students outside. He walks out leaving me to deal with all this shit that he's just created. Mindset.
Yeah.
That's what he was like all the time. But another one, it was a bank holiday weekend, and he wanted to go out for something to eat. And he said, I know where we can go. And he made me drive him to this pub in Liverpool, right? He pulls on the car park, and the car park's full of people having their own barbecues outside the pub, right? Just going in and getting the booze and having it. And it was the roughest set of people you've ever seen, right? And I pulls up and I went, no. He went, what do you mean, no? I said, Sensei, we're not going in here. This is just, as soon as I open my mouth in here, it's going to kick off. Yeah. And he's going, I want something to eat. I said, I'll take you somewhere else. We're not going here. So I turns the car around, drives off. And as we're leaving the car park, he puts his hand on my shoulder. And I said, what? He went, sometimes you need to tell me to feck off. And I was like, yeah, I understand what you mean. That was a lesson in that I will always just do it on tour.
Yeah.
You know, but this is what I mean. He was very clever in certain ways of making me tap into a certain side of my psyche, if you will.
Yeah.
That was it.
But you see, this, as you were saying this, it's funny because I always say the same thing. So, I'm, you know me well enough now, Steve, to know I've told people for years, I fake it to make it, right? So, believe it or not, one of my students reminded me of this on Tuesday. He says, you know that quote, Mick, the quote about the monsters. And I went, oh, shit, yeah, I forgot about that. He said, say it, because I love it when you say it. And I went, I said, I used to be scared of monsters. So do you know what I did? I became one. And you say that to kids and they go, whoa, wow. And I went, yeah, but I wasn't really a monster. I pretended. But most people don't know what a monster really looks like. So I was able to fake it. And the more I faked it, the more I started to believe it. And then paradoxically, one day I was able to do that. And I remember saying, I referenced Jeff Thompson a few times. So Jeff was back in the early days, especially when we were doing all of that, the fence concepts and as I've said before, Jeff's been dead lucky because he's been able to do it twice. He's been able to use people's fears, and I mean this in the nicest possible way. So he's been able to reinvent himself. First of all, he was a martial artist, where most people who went into martial arts wouldn't admit that the reason they went in because they were afraid, right? Because I was that afraid of getting the shit kicked out of me. I was more than prepared to get battered a lot, so that when I had to actually do it for real, I was the one doing it, right? So that was the first part. And then the second part of Jeff's thing was the fact that when people did all the training, then they were 10, maybe 15 years older, what was hitting them then? It wasn't the fear of intimidation and altercation. It was the fear of dying. It was the memento mori. Embracing death. Once you embrace death, you can truly live. You know what I mean? And it was really funny because I still say this. I know loads of people like Steve. Me and you worked in construction our whole lives, right? As soon as you walk through the door and you see a hole in an internal door, and they say, "Do you want a cup of tea?" and you're like, "Not really, thank you," because first of all, you don't know what's going to be put into that tea. That's the first thing, and more importantly, if you're the sort of person that goes around hitting an inanimate object, you're telling me that you can't control your rage, which you're not the sort of person I want to be around, right? But are you able to switch it on, and then are you able to switch it off immediately? And when we used to first do, when me and Al Pearson first started training and trying to figure out what we were doing, we did a hell of a lot of trying to get that altered state. So could you switch it on? Because Al used to always go mad at me because I used to say, see these will get you locked up. See that will keep you locked up. And I was like, yeah, but when you say that on seminars, Mick, and I went, no, the guy in the shiny suit that I'm paying £150 an hour to, that lawyer, I'll let him do the talking for me. Yeah, but you look guilty. And I'm like, yeah, but I already look guilty because I was kicking the guy in the head. It wasn't that I looked guilty. I was guilty. Now it's a case of trying to prove it. And then I was like, yeah, but you can't say that to people. And I went, right, then we should tell them to get a pair of running spikes and learn how to run, and then spend the rest of their life being frightened. And it was like when you were saying that about the Ronnie Colwell story, it's funny because going in there the first time and he's going in, and it's like, I want egg and chips. And he put you in there. Why? Because he knew, you're going to bottle it in front of your boys. You're going to bottle it in front of him. Right. And then you got that internal dialogue of going, is egg and chips really that worth it? And then the second time, which actually out of the two stories I like more, which is the bit where it's very Sun Tzu, which is, are you dictating the terrain of this fight? Are you dictating the time of this? Like very, very Sun Tzu. As I said, he's one of the guys that I really, really wish that I'd met, which is going to actually lead me into my last question, right? And again, I sort of know the answer, but I like the guys to hear this, right? So I've got to give a shout out to the Tiverdale boys, right? Because they are like, you know, when you go and teach for them and they're like, first time we ever taught, they were like, how much do you want? And I went, what are you doing here? And they went, well, we're raising money for charity. And I said, I don't want anything. And they were like, what do you mean? And I said, no, we'll go out for a bite to eat afterwards. And they were like, well, let me give you a bag of Tiverdale tat, which I really like. You know, you go there and it's like they give you this lucky bag. And it's like, well, I'll go back and the wife's going, great. So I've got another 2 mugs with some random martial arts logo on them, right? Which, by the way, first person who ever gave me that ever was Samuel Kwok. Like Samuel Kwok gave me a mug with his name on it. And I went, what's this? He goes, everyone drinks tea, Mick. And I was like, yeah, but you're like some martial arts master. He goes, yeah, but I'll make more money out of mugs than I will out of teaching Kung Fu. And you're looking at it going, Jesus, Sam, you're a genius, mate. So like, I have to give them the shout out only for the simple reason. It was the first time that I went there. Steve was there and he was wearing the black gi, right? So what is it illustrative of? Where did it come about? What's the genesis behind it? I know all of this, but it's for people who are listening because I love the way that you're going to explain it. All right. So the black gi, mate, because guess what? Karatekas don't wear black gis. Over to you.
Right, so everybody knows in the early 1900s when Okinawans decided that, you've got that famous picture of the masters all sat round, and they decided to export karate to Japan, to the mainland, and we'll all make our fortune, we'll spread it out, which you can't call that, because without that, none of us would have done karate, right?
Yeah.
But off the back of that, there's a lot of the older guys went, what? You want to give the Japanese the only thing that we've got to protect us from them? No, you're not. Yeah, we are. Yeah, we are. We've got to grow up. We've got to move on. So, in revolt of that, right, against that, some of the older guys then started to wear the black gi, like a black armband, if you will, as kind of going against the movement of karate forward. So I was speaking to, I got told this by a guy called Cesar Bukowski, which is probably the main guy in Canada, who's a very good friend of Ronnie Colwell Sensei. And some of his senior guys were wearing the black gi with the white bottoms. And so I messaged him and I asked him, I said, can I ask you why? I said, some of you guys have all black gis and some just have a black gi top. So he told me the story. So the guys who are all in the black gis, it's a Kobudo gi, when they, so the balls don't mark the gis and they can wear them for longer. And then he told me the story about when they get to a certain grade, they can choose which way the karate goes. And I thought, you know what, that's what it is. So I chose to wear them wearing the black gi because only a black gi top, because it is my ode to the old guys who wanted it to stay self-protection, stay just for them, not bastardize it and send it out there. Even though without it, I want to probably I would have been doing something else. So it's kind of, it's basically what this says, it's basically exactly what this is. So Koru, ancient ways, Shotokan, where we train. So the Koru Shotokan, black gi, it's pre-karate. It's a ode to the old guys who wanted it about this and not about this.
Yeah. Well, you see, this is funny because I've been thinking about you a lot recently because I knew we were going to come up. I don't mean that in a weird way, by the way, but I was thinking about you a lot because I can't believe I'm saying this, right? I've got a dear friend of mine, and it's like Terry Barnett once said first time we ever met. So Terry Barnett is one of the loveliest men you'd ever wish to meet. I'm going to quickly go in. Do you remember when you said that Ronnie Colwell said when you were like, I wish I'd met you earlier? I had the same conversation with Terry Barnett, and Terry said, don't think so. He goes, I don't know if I'd have liked you. You might not have liked me. And I went, what? He goes, we met at exactly right time, Mick. He said, what were you like in your 20s? And I was like, pain in the ass, really. And I say, like, now I'm an amusing pain in the ass. Back in those days, I was just a pain in the ass, right? And he was like, no, no, no. And he was, so Terry teaches a couple of seminars a year for John Hagen, right? So I always use, like, John Hagen is one of the legitimately old school black belts in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, black belt in Judo, ex-Royal Marine, really highly graded guy in Krav Maga, very, very good martial artist. And dare I say it, he's probably about the only guy I know that can get me biting my lip because he's as good at sarcasm and wind-ups as I am. Like, he's brutal, right? And, you know, famously, he'll tell you, he went, the reason I'm saying the whole story is he's one of Hoist Gracie's first black belts in the UK. In fact, I think he was Hoist's first black belt. And he went over to test. And he went over there. Basically, I've put the time in. Hoist knows me really well. So he just went over. And what he did was he'd done all of the sport jiu-jitsu, but he hadn't done any of the, like, the self-defense, which I'll tell you right now, I rate that old school Gracie jiu-jitsu, right, which is bringing us back to the whole thing with the black gi, right? They taught it as not just rolling around the beach having, like, mad fights because they were just, like, crazy Brazilians, but they needed it to fight. And, like, the whole thing about the Brazilians is the guys in the kimonos were always the rich guys. The guys who did the no-gi and the lucha libre, they were the guys from the favelas. So they, like, there was already this thing between those guys. And John went over, did his black belt, and he failed it. And he admitted, and he admits, he goes, he thought it was a foregone conclusion that I just showed up. And because he hadn't worked the self-defense aspect of it, he failed. So he went back the following year, worked on it all, did it. But John's really funny because the reason I'm saying the whole thing is John has this thing where if you train with him, you have to wear a white gi. And that's in deference to Hoist Gracie, to Helio, because Hoist Gracie now wears a blue belt because he says that the black belt's been devalued that much now that the blue belt's probably about the only belt that's worthwhile wearing. And I think old Helio used to do the same. But John actually put something up on Facebook there recently. It was great because he took, there's a picture of him with a big, huge African dude who looks like Francis Ngannou, and he's in a black gi with a white belt on him. And John's been at pains to go, yeah, normally I let that one slide just this once. You know, he goes, yeah, but I allowed him to do it. And it was the whole thing where it's like, it just shows that the more things change, the more they stay the same. It's like right now you can wear any multicolored gi you want. And in jiu-jitsu, Helio would be spinning in his grave like a berimbolo backtake if he saw what jiu-jitsu has turned into. Because as an athletic endeavor and a sport, it's amazing. But going upside down to try and get a leg lock in a real fight, you're going to get American History X, mate. You're going to get your head stomped off you. And because we're in this pivotal moment now where people are now starting to understand what sport is and they're understanding what tradition is. And this is where we're going to wrap up on this thing, because the one thing that I've always admired about you is the fact that you literally know, right? And especially for a karateka, and apologies because I've got a lot of friends of mine who are karatekas, they're still searching for something. It's quite horrible when you see it because they've spent 35 years and they know there's something out there. And no, this is where I'm leading. This is like they're there, and you look at them, and they're like, I get a few of them come to me, and I'm like, no. What I can give you is I can tell you a few jokes, we have a bit of a laugh, and we do it. But if you really want to stick to the real tenets of what karateka was, like it's mad because you don't have to go to Okinawa, mate. You just have to go to Wigan, and it was like last time I was up there, mate. It was great. And it was an absolute joy. As I said, just spend time with you I love anyway, because I love your ethos. You know what I mean? Because it's the truth. Because it's like, this is what I am. I'm too old now to change, right? And I'm quite happy with who I am. And it's just so good to see your dojo doing so well, not selling out. And it was like, me and you send the odd message to each other about, yeah, mate, building site ain't great because it's You know, remember, I always say this, you're the only person on the planet I know who doesn't like summer holidays apart from errant parents, because summer holidays is the busiest time of the year for you, isn't it, mate? Yeah, but mate, I really like, I'm just going to give you the opportunity. So if anyone wants to reach out and connect with you, where do they need to go?
Through social media. If you either search for me through Facebook or Instagram, or through the Dojo, Koru, we've got pages on both as well. That's the way forward to do it. If you're local, if you Google us, you know, you'll find where we are. But just don't be intimidated when you come in, you know. But yeah, it's kind of like, you know, I do seminars. This year I've had to rein them back a bit. I'm not doing more than one a month. I'm not doing it, you know, because I work as well. If they want to sample what we do and get in contact, and I'll come down and do a seminar. It's not an expensive thing. Whatever you take, we split. Half goes to my dojo because I don't make any money from it. All the money pays for my dojo. And then if you want to move on from there, then you can, you know, hopefully you fit in with us, and you know, we fit in with you. You can come and join us.
Mate, first of all, thank you so much for your time. Guys, trust me, like, I know BS when I say it, and I know the real deal when I say it. And I knew Steve was a real deal from day one. I'll sign off on this one. We did a seminar back. You were doing Three Amigos, but we were doing it at Gary's place.
Derby.
In Derby, yeah. So another legit dude, right? And we were there, and I remember, I think it might have been the first time that me and you actually met in real life. And I apologized to you all afterwards, because I was like, I said it to the students. I said, like, you guys are going to have a laugh and a joke, but you're nowhere near going to be as flippant as we've been for the last hour and a half, right? But I watched you guys in action, and I loved it. And I truly mean this. It's like, the great thing about martial arts is you go through and you meet guys that you should have met 25 years ago, but we didn't. First of all, thanks for your friendship, mate. Thanks for being authentic. Thanks for still being a good advert for what it should, like. Don't take yourself too seriously. But as I always say this about you. I always say, like, Steve doesn't take himself seriously at all himself. But the material, what he's all about, like, it's dead serious, because there's some real value there, mate. And it's like, in this ever-changing world where people want the next new thing, and it is quite laughable, especially as a man in my mid-50s now, you know, to see these guys go, well, show me the next new thing. And you're like, people have been fighting for a long time. I'd rather go and see the guys who are just, you know, they've stayed in one piece, stayed compass mentors, which, again, I do, like, we're mad, right? But if we'd have gone into boxing, we wouldn't be here anymore. If we'd have gone into wrestling, we wouldn't have been here. Like, this is the thing. I hate to break it to all you jiu-jitsu boys out there at the moment. Listen to Maurizio. Maurizio will tell you the truth. Do that berimbolo. Guess what? You will be walking around literally like Val Kilmer at the end of Heat, when he got shot in the spine that time. You see, that's the range of motion you're going to have in your neck. And it should be holistic. But, bro, thank you so much for your time. You literally are. You're the real deal, mate. You're a legit sensei, which is what it should be about. But thank you so much. Can't wait to come up and see you again. Spend some time together. You know that, man. Steve, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Perfect.